Let's talk about Shakespeare instead, because we do everything on this show. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here. Apparently Shakespeare, Rafe, very good morning to you, might have been sexist, homophobic and possibly racist and almost certainly a white supremacist.
Yes, absolutely. More insanity coming out from our cultural or anti-cultural institutions, perhaps we should now call them. And this idea that Shakespeare is essentially a proponent of white supremacy because they can't stand the fact that Shakespeare is held up as being the greatest writer of all time because he's European. And this idea they object to is that European culture is seen as the world standard for high art. Well, I'm terribly sorry. For the last 300 years, European culture has stood head and shoulders over every other culture. Wasn't always the case. Asia, at the time of Shakespeare, Asia was the high point for culture and so forth. But today we can quite clearly say that European culture has been the high standard. And this all boils down to the issue that the people that run our cultural institutions, including in this case, actually the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, they can't stand the fact that the greatest writer in the history of the world was an Englishman.
Yes.
That absolutely sticks in their craw, and they will do anything to try and downplay and diminish that achievement.
And one of the things that I saw, and this of course emanates from some madcap professor at the University of Birmingham, in order to sort of redress the balance, they want to introduce Rabindranath Tagore to Stratford-upon-Avon. And there's nothing wrong with Tagore, there's nothing wrong with, you know, poets and writers from other countries, but he's got nothing to do with Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it's impossible to imagine this happening in any other culture, in Japan or even within Europe. You know, this is primarily an Anglosphere phenomenon. You wouldn't find this happening to Proust or whatever in France or to Goethe in Germany. This is something that happens only in English language countries. And listen, there's a reason that Shakespeare is a global phenomenon, and it's because of his timeless insights into the human spirit and the human condition.
Yes.
Characters he created are just as relevant today. They have the same issues dealing with jealousy and love and all of that. The fact is, he just happens to be an Englishman. And you know that this isn't about white supremacy, because if you look at China, for example, and Japan, these countries are fiercely patriotic. They're very defensive of their culture against Western imperialism. They have actually rebuilt Shakespeare's birthplace in China using the same techniques of the Elizabethan era. Huge festivals for Shakespeare in China. Same thing in Japan. You see in India as well, Indians putting on plays of Shakespeare. That's because they appreciate his universal appeal in a way that our woke, educated, nihilistic, self-loathing curators, museum curators and academics can't.
Yes, well, indeed. I mean, Catherine Birbalsingh put a tweet out last night. I don't know if you saw it. She's quoting one of her own teachers from the Michaela School, who said basically, actually, he was very much ahead of his time, Shakespeare. You know, Othello was about a mixed-race relationship that wouldn't even have been shown on TV in this country in the 1950s, you know, never mind when he was writing about it. And he also wrote about, you know, different sexualities and different strange, unusual habits that human beings formed. You know, the idea that he was a monoglot kind of, you know, white supremacist figure was nonsense.
Oh, cool. And of course, famously in The Merchant of Venice, you know, against anti-Semitism, if you prick us, do we not bleed?
Yeah.
And all of this. I mean, the thing is, the big problem people have is they assume that what Shakespeare wrote, Shakespeare believed. Shakespeare never said anything. It was his characters who were saying the things, and he was putting into them all of the vices and the good things and the bad things of human nature and human society.
Yeah.
And to judge the past, I mean, for example, they're also claiming that King Lear is about whiteness. Excuse me? Nobody was thinking about race and all of today's hot topics in a time when we were essentially entirely culturally homogenous and people did not encounter race in their everyday lives. It's extremely dangerous and damaging to do that. And this is just yet more of this war on our history, the war on our culture. Anything that's great about Britain and the West has to somehow have some source of evil at its root core and has to be undermined, is deeply destructive of our society. It demoralizes us as a people because we seem to think that there's nothing around which we can take any pride. This goes along hand in hand with pulling down statues,
Yeah.
renaming parks. This is all about trying to create a cultural year zero where there's nothing in the past to be proud about, and then they can create this new, brave new world that they want to create, where everything's about fetishizing minority cultures over the prevailing predominant British culture.
Yeah, exactly right. Couldn't have put it better myself. Well said. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, thank you very much indeed, broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum.